Right now, somewhere out there, a little girl is signing something to a man who has no idea what she is saying, and in about 30 seconds, what happens next is going to stop you cold. Stay with me, because this story is going to break your heart before it puts it back together again. And I need you here for every single second of it. Tell me where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments right now, because this story was made for people who believe that silence can be the loudest thing in any room. Her name was Iris. Iris Calloway was 8 years old, and she had not heard a single sound since she was 4, not the bark of a dog, not the thunder of a summer storm, not her own mother's voice saying goodbye on the last night that word ever meant anything. Spinal meningitis had swept through her small body like a fire through dry grass, and when it was finally over, the world had gone permanently, irrevocably quiet. She didn't cry about it anymore. She had learned, with the quiet dignity that only children forced to grow up too fast ever truly master, that crying was a waste of energy she couldn't afford. She lived now in the Meadowbrook Group Home for Children in Raleigh, North Carolina, a beige 2-story building on a tired street where the hedges were always just slightly too long and the porch light flickered every time the wind blew. There were 9 other children in the home. None of them knew sign language. The 2 staff members on rotating shifts, kind enough women, stretched impossibly thin, had learned perhaps a dozen signs between them. Hungry. Bathroom. Okay. Stop. Iris had a whole universe living inside her hands, and no one around her spoke the language. She communicated mostly through a small spiral notebook she kept tucked in the front pocket of her purple hoodie. She wrote fast, in neat block letters, tilting the notebook toward whoever she was talking to with a patience that was somehow both exhausting and heartbreaking to witness. The other children had stopped trying to include her at the dinner table. Not out of cruelty, they were just children, and children eventually stop reaching toward silence. Iris had learned to eat with her eyes down and her notebook closed. What she did instead, in the hours that stretched between meals and bedtime, was watch. Iris Calloway was, without question, the most observant person in any room she entered. She watched the way Ms. Darlene, the night supervisor, always pressed her lips together before delivering bad news. She watched the way Danny, the youngest boy in the home, always checked the front door 3 times before he could fall asleep. She watched the comings and goings of the street outside through the smudged glass of the second-floor window, the mail carrier who always paused at the corner, the elderly woman who walked her cat on a leash every morning at 7, the black pickup truck that had been parking across the street every Tuesday for the past 3 weeks. That was the thing nobody else had noticed. The truck. It was always there on Tuesdays. Always parked under the same maple tree, far enough away that the driver's face was hard to make out, but close enough that Iris could see the outline of a man, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, who sat behind the wheel and watched the house with the kind of stillness that was either very peaceful or very troubling, and at 8 years old, Iris wasn't sure which. She wrote it in her notebook, *, the man in the truck won't stop following me. He watches every Tuesday. He followed me to the park on Saturday too. I don't know why. *, she handed the notebook to Ms. Darlene on a Wednesday morning. Ms. Darlene read it. Looked up at Iris. Looked back down. Then she said, slowly and carefully so Iris could read her lips, "Honey, I'm sure it's nothing. Probably just someone waiting for someone on the street." Iris took her notebook back. She did not write anything else. But she did not stop watching either. His name was Nathan Cole, and he was 34 years old, and he was absolutely, completely terrified of the small girl in the second-floor window. Nathan had not planned to become a foster parent. He had not planned most of the major things that had happened to him in the past 3 years. He had not planned to lose his wife, Simone, to an aneurysm at 31. He had not planned to raise their 6-year-old son, Marcus, alone. He had not planned to sell their house in Charlotte, pack everything into his truck, and move to Raleigh to be closer to his sister after the grief had gotten so thick he couldn't breathe through it. And he absolutely had not planned to sit across from a social worker named Patricia Ose 8 months ago and hear himself say, almost before he knew the thought had fully formed, *, I want to foster. I think I have room. Patricia had walked him through the process with the careful thoroughness of someone who had seen too many people approach fostering with the wrong expectations. She had given him the forms and the classes and the home study. She had matched him, after 6 months, with a profile. A little girl. 8 years old. Profoundly deaf since age 4. No living parents. A note in her file that said, Iris communicates through ASL and written notes. She is highly intelligent, deeply observant, and somewhat guarded with adults she does not trust. She will need a caregiver willing to learn. Nathan had stared at that last line for a long time. Willing to learn. He had signed up for an ASL course at the community center the next morning. He was not good at it. He was, in fact, painfully, almost comically bad at it. His instructor, a cheerful woman named Bev who had been deaf since birth, told him with gentle amusement that he signed like a man trying to conduct an orchestra in oven mitts. He practiced in his car. He practiced at his kitchen table after Marcus was asleep. He made flashcards and taped them to his bathroom mirror and mouthed the hand shapes while he brushed his teeth. He was not ready. He knew he was not ready. But the placement date was set for the 3rd Tuesday of October, and so every Tuesday for 3 weeks, he had driven to Meadowbrook, parked under the maple tree, and sat there, not in a creepy way, he genuinely hoped, though he understood how it might look, just trying to make himself brave enough to walk through the door. Trying to feel like a man who deserved to be someone's safe place when he still wasn't sure he was his own. He had no idea she had seen him. He had no idea she had written it down. On the morning of the official placement visit, Nathan arrived at Meadowbrook at 9 o'clock with a tin of homemade chocolate chip cookies his sister had helped him bake, a small book about birds he had found at a used bookstore after reading in Iris's file that she loved to draw them, and hands that would not stop shaking. Ms. Darlene met him at the door. She was warm but watchful, the particular watchfulness of someone who had seen children's hearts broken too many times to be careless with them. She walked him into the front sitting room and told him she would go get Iris. Nathan sat on the edge of the floral couch and practiced the sign for hello one more time. He'd been practicing it for 6 weeks. It was, objectively, the simplest sign in the entire language. He still felt like he was going to forget it the moment the door opened. The door opened. Iris Calloway walked in with her purple hoodie and her spiral notebook and her dark, measuring eyes, and she stopped in the doorway and looked at Nathan Cole for a long, steady moment. And then she looked at his hands. He had practiced the sign. He raised his right hand, fingers together, palm facing out, touched his forehead, and brought it forward and down. Hello? Iris stared at him. She looked at Ms. Darlene. She looked back at Nathan. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her notebook, flipped to a page near the back, and held it up so Nathan could read what was already written there, written days before, in her neat block letters. The man in the truck won't stop following me. He knows sign language. I can tell by the way his hands move when he thinks no one is watching. Nathan's mouth went dry. She had known. She had been watching him practice in his car for 3 weeks. And she hadn't told anyone because she had been waiting, not in fear, but with the patience of a child who had learned that the people worth trusting were the ones who showed up before they were asked. The placement visit was supposed to last 1 hour. It lasted 4. Ms. Darlene had retreated to the kitchen after the first 30 minutes, shooting Nathan a look over Iris's head that could only be translated as, don't mess this up. Nathan did not plan to mess it up. He was also not entirely confident he wouldn't. He and Iris sat across from each other at the low table in the sitting room, and for the first 10 minutes, neither of them moved. Nathan had his tin of cookies. Iris had her notebook. The bird book sat on the table between them like a peace offering, or possibly a test. Iris picked it up. Opened it to the middle. Ran one finger along the illustration of a cedar waxwing, its sleek crest, its yellow-tipped tail, the small red drops on its wing feathers like wax seals. She looked up at Nathan and held her hands up in a question he could not yet read. He leaned forward. I don't know that sign yet, he said, and then, carefully, spelled it out, *CDRWXWING, finger by agonizing finger, slow and clumsy, watching her face to see if he was getting it right. She watched his hands with the focused intensity of someone reading something important. Then she showed him. Her hands moved quick and elegant, a motion that somehow captured the sweep of wings and the sleek head and the stillness of a bird on a branch all at once. It was, Nathan thought, more beautiful than the actual word. He tried it. He failed. He tried again. She shook her head, moved his fingers slightly, repositioned his wrist. He tried a third time. Her expression didn't change, exactly, but something in it shifted, not a smile, not quite, but the suggestion that a smile existed somewhere in the near future and was, under the right conditions, theoretically available. They went through the whole bird book like that. Nathan fumbling and Iris correcting, silent except for the rare times he said a name out loud to help himself spell it. By the end of the first hour, he had learned 11 new signs, gotten 5 of them approximately right, and completely butchered the remaining 6 in ways that Iris apparently found somewhere on the spectrum between baffling and endearing. Marcus arrived at 2 o'clock. Nathan's sister had dropped him off after school, and the dynamic shifted entirely. Marcus was 6 years old and had no fear of silence, and no patience for social hesitation, a combination that made him the most effective ambassador Nathan could possibly have brought. He walked into the room, clocked Iris with her notebook and her hoodie, announced without preamble that he had lost his 2 front teeth and did she want to see, and stuck his face about 12 inches from hers to display the gap. Iris blinked. Then she did something Nathan had not seen in all 4 hours. She laughed. No sound. He didn't know yet if she ever made sounds, had not asked, was not going to ask today. But the laugh was completely visible in her face and her shaking shoulders and the way she pressed her hand briefly over her mouth before she pulled out her notebook and wrote, *It looks like a cave. Marcus read it, and announced that he was going to call his gap the Cave of Marcus and someday a tiny wizard would live in it, and Iris wrote back, *Wizards are very small, you should charge rent. And Nathan sat watching his son and this girl trade notes back and forth with the strange ease of people who had known each other in some other life, and felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 3 years. He drove home that evening with the windows down and the radio off and his mind very full and very quiet. That night, after Marcus was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with his ASL flashcards spread out in front of him, and he practiced until his hands ached. Iris moved in on a Saturday in early November, carrying everything she owned in one duffel bag and one cardboard box. The duffel bag held clothes and her notebook collection. She had 6 of them, filled front to back with her block letter observations of the world. The cardboard box held her colored pencils and her bird drawings, hundreds of them, on every kind of paper she'd been able to find, and a single photograph she kept face down at the bottom, which Nathan did not ask about. Her room was small and blue-walled, with a window that faced the backyard maple tree. Nathan had put up a bird feeder that morning, positioned so she could see it from her desk. He had not mentioned this. He just made sure it was there. She noticed immediately. She stood at the window for a long moment, then turned and signed something to Nathan. He caught about half of it, something about the feeder, something he couldn't parse, and the sign for *Y. He said slowly, picking his signs with the care of someone choosing which stepping stones to trust. *I read your file. Birds. You like birds. She looked at him for a moment. Then she signed, *You read my file. Yes. I wanted to know you before I met you. She considered this. Then, what else did you read? Everything I could find. He paused, then added the sign he'd learned only that week, one that had taken him 4 days to get right. I wanted to be ready for you. Iris turned back to the window. A chickadee had landed on the feeder, small, quick, black and white. She watched it for a moment, then reached into her box and pulled out a fresh notebook. She opened it to the first page and wrote, in her neatest letters, something she had never written in any of the previous 6 notebooks. This might be okay. She set it on the desk. She did not show it to Nathan, but she left it open where he could see it from the doorway. He saw it. The first real crisis came 3 weeks in, on a school day, and it came from the last direction Nathan expected. Iris attended Millbrook Elementary, which had a small deaf and hard of hearing program with a dedicated teacher, Ms. Farrow, who was herself hearing but fluent in ASL. It was, by any reasonable measure, a good placement. Iris was academically well ahead of her grade level. She was quiet, but not isolated. She had a particular bond with a deaf classmate named Priya, a tiny, furious girl who communicated with the speed and expressiveness of someone who had a great deal to say and resented every second it took to say it. The problem was the bus. The afternoon bus home was supervised by a driver named Mr. Beckett, who was not unkind but was not particularly attentive, and 3 fifth-grade boys who sat in the back had been, for 2 weeks, in the way that children find to be quietly, deniably cruel, making fun of Iris's hands. They mimicked her signs and exaggerated, mocking movements when they thought no one could see. They did it just far enough away that she caught it only in peripheral vision, only in the freeze of their faces when they realized she'd seen. She hadn't told anyone. She had written it in her notebook, face after face, scene after scene, documented with the methodical precision of a field researcher. But she had not reported it. On the 3rd week, one of the boys, bolder than the others, leaned over the seat and mimed signing something grotesque directly at her face, grinning at his friends. Iris stood up. She walked to the front of the bus. She tapped Mr. Beckett on the shoulder. He startled, nearly swerved, and held up her notebook. 3 boys in row 8 have been mocking my disability for 2 weeks. I have documented the dates, times, and a physical description of each incident. I would like you to contact the school, or I will contact them myself when I get home. Mr. Beckett read it. Then he read it again. Then he pulled the bus over. What happened in the back of that bus, what those 3 boys faced, what Iris did next, and the phone call Nathan received at 4:15 that afternoon, was the moment that changed everything between them. Because Nathan did not respond the way Iris expected. He did not get angry at the boys, though he was. He did not call the school and demand consequences, though he did that too later. The first thing he did, the very first thing, 30 seconds after he arrived at school and found Iris sitting outside the principal's office, calm and notebook closed and entirely composed, was sign something to her. Something she had never had an adult sign to her before. I'm proud of you. The weeks that followed were not easy, and Nathan had been around long enough, had buried enough of his own easy assumptions about what healing looked like, to understand that easy was not the same as good. Iris was not difficult. She was careful. There is a difference, and it matters. A difficult child pushes against everything. A careful child tests everything, quietly, systematically, the way a person tests ice before they step, not because they want to fall through, but because they have fallen through before and the memory of cold water never entirely leaves the body. She tested him in small ways. She left her shoes in the hallway 3 times to see if he'd lose his temper over small messes. He didn't. He moved them to the mat and said nothing. She stayed up past her bedtime with her light on for a week straight, notebook and colored pencils spread across her bed, watching the door. He knocked on the 3rd night, signed still awake. She nodded, and he sat on the edge of her bed for 20 minutes while she drew and he practiced his signs in the quiet. He went back to bed. She turned her light out 5 minutes later. He didn't make a big production of any of it. He just showed up. Marcus, for his part, was completely unbothered by all the testing. He had declared himself Iris's official best friend within the first week and proceeded to behave accordingly, leaving crayon drawings under her door, teaching her his extremely idiosyncratic system of hand signals for video game moves, which bore no resemblance to actual ASL but which Iris seemed to find deeply entertaining, and insisting on sitting next to her at every meal so he could narrate his food. "This is broccoli," he announced one evening, signing the word badly enough that Iris corrected him automatically. And I don't like it, but Dad says it's important for my bones, which is dumb because my bones are fine. Iris wrote, asterisk, how do you know? Have you seen your bones? Asterisk. I would remember if I saw my own bones, Marcus said with great dignity. Asterisk, not necessarily. You see your brain every time you think, and you can't see that either. Asterisk, Marcus chewed on this, along with his broccoli. She's really smart, he told Nathan loudly. I know, said Nathan, and Iris looked at her plate, but her shoulders did something that had become, over the past weeks, one of Nathan's most carefully collected observations, a small, inward movement, the closing of something tender around something warm. The social worker visits were every 2 weeks. Patricia Osei was a small woman with close-cropped natural hair and reading glasses that she wore on a beaded chain, and she had 17 years in child welfare and the particular quality of attentiveness that comes from having seen too much to miss anything. She sat in Nathan's kitchen on her 3rd visit with a cup of tea and her case notes, and she asked Iris, through signs, how things were going. Iris considered the question. Then she signed, asterisk, he makes mistakes. He gets signs wrong and has to ask me to repeat things. But he always asks. He doesn't pretend. Asterisk, Patricia translated this for Nathan, who had caught most of it but not all. She says you always ask, Patricia said. She means that as a compliment. Nathan looked at Iris. Iris looked back at him with her steady, measuring eyes. He signed slowly, asterisk, thank you for teaching me. Asterisk, Iris picked up her notebook. She wrote something, then paused. Then she wrote one more word. She turned the notebook toward him. Asterisk, you're welcome. You're getting better. Asterisk, November became December, and December brought the school winter concert. This was, on the surface, a logistical complication. Millbrook Elementary's winter concert involved 3 choral numbers, a recorder ensemble, and a narrated holiday poem, none of which translated easily to a deaf child's participation. Ms. Farrow had suggested Iris might do an ASL interpretation of one of the songs, standing to the side of the stage while the hearing children sang. Iris had declined. She had written, in her careful letters, asterisk, I don't want to stand on the side. I want to be in the middle. Asterisk, Ms. Farrow had brought this to the principal. The principal had brought it to the music teacher, a young man named Mr. Ashby who had been teaching at Millbrook for 2 years and had, by his own cheerful admission, absolutely no experience with deaf education but an enormous amount of enthusiasm for a challenge. He had gone to Nathan. She wants to perform, he said, sitting across from Nathan at the kitchen table with the kind of earnest energy that Nathan found both admirable and slightly exhausting. She won't tell me what she wants to perform. She says she wants to figure it out herself. But she says she needs help from someone who can hear. Nathan looked at Iris, who was sitting at the far end of the table with her notebook, absolutely pretending not to be paying attention. Iris, Nathan signed. What do you want to do? She signed something complex, something Nathan had to ask her to repeat twice, something that took 3 tries and a written note to fully communicate. But when he finally understood it, he sat back in his chair and felt the particular, quiet expansion in his chest that he was beginning to recognize as wonder. She wanted to perform a piece she had written herself. A piece in which she would sign a poem, her own poem, written in English and signed in ASL simultaneously, about what silence sounds like from the inside. And she needed someone, one person, to read the English words aloud as she signed them, so that the hearing audience could follow. Not as a translation. As a duet. She wanted Nathan to be that person. Me, he signed. And then, because the sign alone didn't feel like enough, you want me. She looked at him steadily. Then she signed, slow, clear, deliberate, the way she signed things she meant completely. Asterisk, you learned my language. You should be there when I use it. Asterisk, Nathan excused himself to the hallway for approximately 90 seconds. When he came back, his eyes were slightly red, and Iris was very carefully not looking at him, and Marcus had his head tilted in the deeply suspicious way of a 6-year-old who suspects something important is happening but can't quite identify what. "Fine," Nathan said, and signed it too. "We'd better practice." They practiced every evening for 3 weeks. The poem was 8 stanzas. Iris had written it in her notebook in block letters and then rewritten it on good paper in her neatest hand, the hand she used for things that mattered. She handed Nathan his copy on a Monday evening and watched him read it with her chin resting on her hands and her eyes very still. He read it twice. The poem was about a world full of sound that she moved through like a fish moves through a current, feeling the pressure without hearing the roar. It was about watching people's faces when they spoke and learning that the true language of a person was never in their voice but always in the small movements of the eyes and mouth. It was about a truck parked under a maple tree, and a man practicing his hands in a car when he thought no one was watching, and the way a person could speak a whole language of "I'm trying, I'm here, I'm learning you" without making a single sound. Nathan set the paper down. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then he signed slowly, "This is about me." Iris shrugged one shoulder. Then she signed, "It's about what it means when someone shows up." The winter concert was on December 18th, and it should have been a good day. It was, instead, the day Nathan received the phone call. He was in the school parking lot at 4:30, still 90 minutes before the concert was scheduled to begin, going over the poem lines in his head when his phone rang. The number was from the county social services office. He answered without thinking. The voice on the other end was a man he'd never spoken to before, a supervisor, someone above Patricia's pay grade, which immediately made Nathan's stomach cold. There had been, the man explained in the careful, apologetic tone of someone delivering a bureaucratic disaster, a review of Iris's placement file. A biological relative had come forward. An aunt, Iris's mother's younger sister, who lived in Asheville and had recently become aware that Iris was in the foster system. She was petitioning for kinship placement. The process, the man explained, would take several weeks to evaluate. In the meantime, Iris's placement with Nathan was under review. There was no decision yet. Nothing was final. He was simply required, by law, to inform Nathan of the development. Nathan sat in the parking lot for 7 minutes after the call ended. Then he got out of the car and walked into the school and found Iris in the classroom where the performers were waiting, already in her navy blue dress, already calm, her notebook on her lap, drawing a bird on the cover page with her purple-colored pencil. She looked up when he came in. She read his face the way she read everything, completely, without the ability to look away from what was true. She signed, "What happened?" He could have waited. He should have, probably, waited until after the concert, until she had this one good thing whole and uninterrupted. But she was watching him with those dark, reading eyes, and he had made a commitment to himself, on the day he brought her home, that he would not be a person who managed the truth to make himself more comfortable. He sat down in the small chair across from her. He signed carefully, every word, "I got a call today. Your aunt, your mother's sister, she wants to be your family. The county is looking at whether to move you to her home. Nothing is decided. I wanted you to know." Iris was very still for a long moment. Then she picked up her notebook and wrote, "Do you want me to go?" Nathan looked at her. He signed, without any pause at all, "No. I want you to stay. But what matters is what is best for you. And I will fight for you if that's what you want. I just need to know what you want." Iris looked at the words she had written. She looked at Nathan's face. Then she closed the notebook. She stood up. She tucked her purple pencil behind her ear. She smoothed the front of her navy dress. She signed, "I'll decide after. Right now I have a poem." The school gymnasium held perhaps 200 people that evening. Parents in the good chairs near the front, siblings spilling off laps, the unmistakable humid warmth of too many bodies in a room designed for slightly fewer. Nathan sat in the third row with Marcus, who had taken his role as audience member extremely seriously, and was already vibrating with barely contained enthusiasm. The choral numbers went first. Then the recorder ensemble, which was enthusiastic if not precisely musical. Then Mr. Ashby stepped to the microphone and explained briefly and warmly that their final performance was something a little different, a piece written entirely by one of Millbrook's own students, performed as a partnership between that student and her foster father. Nathan walked to one side of the stage. Iris walked to the other. She stood center stage under the bright lights in her navy dress with her neat dark hair and her hands at her sides, completely still, the calmest person in the building. Nathan unfolded his paper. She looked at him. He looked at her. She gave him the smallest nod, the nod that meant *ready. He began to read. Silence does not sound like nothing. It sounds like the hum of a refrigerator felt through the floor. It sounds like a dog's breath on your cheek. It sounds like the change in the air when someone enters the room. As he read, she signed, and her hands were not translation, not interpretation, not accompaniment. They were the original language, and his voice was the echo, and together they were both, and the room went very, very quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something true is happening. By the 6th stanza, half the parents were crying. By the 8th, Nathan's voice had developed the particular roughness of a person who is reading something that means more than the words. Silence sounds like a man in a truck who does not know I can see him. Practicing words he does not yet know. Trying to speak before he is asked. That is the loudest thing I have ever heard. When they finished, the room held its breath for one full second. Then it broke into applause that Marcus described afterward as basically the sound of a rocket ship. Which was not wrong. What happened the following morning, when Patricia O'Shea sat across from Nathan and Iris at the kitchen table with her case file and her reading glasses and a piece of news that neither of them had seen coming, was the moment that would decide everything. Because the aunt in Asheville had responded to the county's initial contact. And what she had said was not what anyone expected. Patricia O'Shea arrived at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, which was already unusual. Her visits were always scheduled, always on Tuesdays. She had called Nathan the night before and asked if she could come. Her voice had been careful in the way voices go careful around important things, and Nathan had spent most of the night not sleeping in the way people don't sleep when they're trying to prepare for something and don't know what they're preparing for. Iris was already at the table when Patricia came in. She had her notebook and her pencil, and she had poured herself a glass of orange juice, and she looked at Patricia with the particular focused calm of someone who has made a decision and is waiting to see if the world will cooperate. Marcus was at school. Nathan had not told him about the kinship petition. He would, when there was something certain to tell. Patricia sat down. She pulled out her case file. She looked at both of them for a moment over the rim of her reading glasses in the way she had that conveyed a great deal without words. Then she said, "I heard from Diane. Iris's aunt." Iris was watching Patricia's lips. Nathan was watching Iris. "She said she was contacted by the county last week. She said she's been trying to find Iris for over a year. She lost track of her during the placement process. She said she didn't even know Iris was in foster care until a friend who works in social services mentioned it." Nathan felt the cold settling in his chest. Patricia continued, "She's a good person, from what I can tell. She lives alone. She works as a librarian. She has no experience with deaf children, no sign language, no background in accessibility support." Patricia paused. She also, in her own words, couldn't bear the thought of Iris thinking that no one in her family was looking. The table was very quiet. Patricia looked at Iris. Slowly, carefully, she signed. Patricia had begun studying ASL after taking on Iris's case. * Your aunt loves you. She wants you to know she has always been looking for you. * Iris's hands, which had been still on the table, moved very slightly. Nathan caught the signs. * Does she know sign language? * Patricia, * no. But she said she would learn. Asterisk something moved across Iris's face, something complicated, something that took several seconds to pass through its full weather system. Shock, grief, longing, a careful and self-protective distance, and then, underneath all of it, something that Nathan recognized because he had watched it appear gradually on his own face in the bathroom mirror over the past year. The fragile, terrifying motion of someone beginning to believe that maybe there was more good coming. She picked up her notebook. She wrote for a long time, longer than usual. Then she turned it toward Nathan. Asterisk I would like to meet her. But I don't want to leave here. Can both things be true at the same time? Asterisk Nathan read it. He looked at Patricia. Patricia said, "That, actually, is exactly what I came to talk to you both about." The conversation that followed lasted 2 hours, and it was the most important 2 hours Nathan had spent at a kitchen table in his adult life. Diane Calloway, 41 years old, librarian, lover of birds. This detail came up in Patricia's notes, and Nathan saw Iris's hands pause over her notebook when it was mentioned, had made a statement to the county that was, in Patricia's words, somewhat unusual in kinship cases. She had said that her goal was not to remove Iris from a stable placement, but to ensure that Iris knew she had family who had not abandoned her. She had said explicitly that if Iris was thriving and attached, she did not want to uproot her. She had said she wanted to be in Iris's life, whatever form that took: aunt, family, person who visited, someone who learned sign language and came to school concerts. She had asked, through Patricia, whether Nathan would be open to contact. Nathan had looked at Iris. Iris had looked at Nathan. Then Iris had taken her notebook and written the following, in her neatest letters, and slid it across the table to Patricia. Asterisk tell her that the man who is my foster dad practiced sign language in a parked car for 3 weeks before he met me because he wanted to be ready. Tell her that this family already has one person who showed up before they were asked. Tell her I think there's room for another. Asterisk Patricia read it. She looked at Iris over her glasses for a long moment. Then she wrote down the message, word for word, to send to Diane. Diane Calloway drove up from Asheville on a Saturday in January, and she arrived with a casserole and a brand new ASL dictionary with sticky notes on 40 pages. And she stood in Nathan's doorway looking at Iris with the particular expression of a person who has been searching for something for a long time and is not yet entirely sure they're allowed to have it. Iris stood in the hallway in her purple hoodie and studied her aunt for a long, considering moment. Then she stepped forward and signed, slowly, the sign she had taught Nathan on the very first day, *hello. Diane's eyes went bright. She had clearly been practicing. Her hand came up, shaky, uncertain, beautiful, and she signed back, *hello. And Marcus, appearing from the kitchen with a cookie in each hand, announced, "She's doing the hands. She already knows the hands." And the tension broke into laughter, and Diane was inside the house and Iris was showing her the bird feeder, and something that had been broken for a very long time began, in the patient and ordinary way of real healing, to knit itself back together. The adoption was finalized on a Tuesday in March, a Tuesday, which felt right, which felt like everything beginning from the same place it started. The courthouse was small and a little cold and entirely undramatic, which Nathan thought was exactly correct. Real things, important things, don't usually happen in grand settings. They happen in small rooms with fluorescent lights and people in business casual who hand you forms to sign, and the forms are just paper until you sign them, and then they are the whole world. Iris wore her navy blue dress, the concert dress. Nathan noticed this and did not say anything about it. Marcus wore his best shirt and had somehow gotten chocolate on it already, which Diane cleaned off with a wipe from her purse with the ease of a woman who had spent her whole adult life surrounded by children and their inevitable chocolate. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and a no-nonsense manner that softened visibly when she looked at Iris. She asked, through an interpreter the court had provided, whether Iris understood what was happening today. Iris signed, *yes. Today Nathan Cole becomes my father officially. But he was already my father before this. The judge looked at Nathan. Nathan signed, slowly, imperfectly, beautifully, in the language he had been learning for a year and a half in parked cars and at kitchen tables and in the small daily education of a person trying to reach someone worth reaching. I have been ready for you since before I knew you existed. Iris held out her hand. Not for him to hold, just toward him, open, the way you hold out your hand to a bird you are hoping will land. Nathan put his hand under hers. The judge signed the papers. Outside, on the courthouse steps, in the thin winter sunlight, with Marcus doing a victory lap around a stone pillar and Diane taking photographs and Patricia Osei dabbing her eyes with complete professional dignity, Iris stood beside Nathan and looked out at the street. She signed, thank you for parking outside my window. He signed, thank you for watching. She leaned slightly into his arm. Not dramatically. Just slightly, the way a person leans when they have decided that the ground beneath them is trustworthy. He did not move. He stayed exactly where he was, the way he planned to stay, for the rest of his life. If this story found something in you, if you've ever been the person watching from a parked car, practicing for something you're not ready for, hoping you'll be enough, drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that showing up, even quietly, even badly, even before you're ready, is the bravest thing a person can do. And if you believe in stories about people who choose each other in the most ordinary and extraordinary ways, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We make these stories for the people who need them. You are exactly the person we make them for. Thank you for being here. Star.